Today's guest is Rebecca Rettig, Chief Legal Officer at Jito Labs, a blockchain infrastructure company that helps scale the Solana blockchain. Rebecca has a decade of experience in both crypto and traditional law and has been at the forefront of advocating for fair treatment of DeFi as Washington crafts key crypto legislation. Rebecca, welcome to Crypto in America.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. So our first question we like to ask our guests is, what does crypto in America mean to you?
We had the DeFi roundtable at the SEC about a little over a week ago now. And what we talked about there in terms of DeFi was really the concepts of frontierism, liberty, and freedom to sort of transact and interact in the ways that work for you. And that's really what I do think crypto in America is about, is this idea of pushing the frontier, continuing to build new systems that for a long time have been innovative in America. And that is what crypto means to me. So excited to be on this podcast to talk about it.
Does crypto in America mean something different to you now than it might have maybe, say, 1 or 2 years ago?
It means the same thing. I think the opportunity to make it into a reality is different now than it was 1 or 2 years ago. So, I mean, I got into crypto because of all of those things, right? The idea that you could build something new and you could build it here, and that this, not to be super cheesy about it, but this is the land of opportunity in many ways. People come here from all over the world because of the opportunity. Crypto represents that opportunity in so many ways, both globally, but also in the United States. And so the ability to make it a reality now and to actually be able to build it out with guardrails that make sense for the industry, I think does mean something new and different than it did a few years ago.
Before we dive into what is possible and what's coming down the line on the policy front, you've been a crypto lawyer, quote unquote, for a long time, arguably before it was cool. We want to know what drew you into the space. How do you even become a lawyer within the crypto and blockchain space? Kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, it was definitely way before it was cool. People were like, what? What are you going to do? The law firm where I worked at the time when I decided to get into crypto was not touching it and now has its own blockchain and crypto sort of practice. So, everything that's not cool is not cool now. To be a crypto lawyer, and Gerald can probably talk about this too, I think it's taken on a new moniker. I think of it as like, a normal software or product lawyer with an expertise in or at least enough of an expertise to be dangerous in almost every category of regulation that exists, because crypto touches so much. So, a lot of times when you're dealing with a software or certain types of software, you only have to know what are communications laws, like Section 230 and dealing with the internet. Here, because of what crypto does and what it is, you may still need to know those types of product issues, but you need to know now where the securities laws may intersect, where the commodities laws may intersect, where the money transmission laws, where the sanctions or financial integrity laws may intersect, where payments laws may intersect. And so, look, you can't be all things to all people, although many crypto lawyers try. And crypto loves to try to be all things to all people.
We try, right? We try. Yeah, plus, you forgot therapist,
Yeah. But crypto definitely tries to be all things to all people. I feel like as a crypto lawyer, my advice a lot is let's just focus on this one thing for now. But I think it really takes sort of being a generalist and having this specific knowledge of both the product, but also the culture around crypto. Crypto does feel very cultural. And I feel like we all speak a different language. It was, I'd say, even more pronounced maybe 2 to 4 years ago, where people didn't understand the language, and it's becoming so much more common and part of the vernacular now. My mom kind of knows what stablecoins are, and I'm from rural Illinois, so I do think it's about having an expertise in the culture and the product more than the law.
Yeah, so I want to ask you about the culture, and I think what you just alluded to, maybe the way the space, especially the legal space, has developed over the last couple of years. You and I both know, I guess we're in a lot of the same Telegram chats, about the law, and there's a lot of big personalities in the space, and it can get pretty tribal. That comes through in different ways. I think often for me, it's like mom and dad are fighting in the chat. But the
not me though. I am not one of the fighting people.
Right. No, we're both very neutral and very positive people. But that you are kind of seeing that expressed in some of the legislations coming out or some of these ideas around structuring. How do you deal with that as one of the nice people and one of the ones who's like really focused on product? Like, how do you think we can navigate that as like a community?
Yeah, that's a great question. And everybody I think experiences this because everybody is touching crypto in this discussion in a different way. Look, part of this crypto in America concept is the innovation. And part of the things that make being a lawyer attractive or a lawyer in crypto attractive is that you get to be creative. And right, like I worked on token launches in 2019 and 2018, and that was all innovative, but it still feels innovative to work on token launches today. And so people do feel extremely wedded to their innovative ideas. And I think it's great. I think that we've seen different ideas get pushed through in the legislation at different points in time, depending on who's in the room or who is including other people in the room. But I think we are slowly getting to a place where crypto has taken so much prominence and people really understand now that this is a real opportunity, given where we are for the next 4 years, and that we have a pretty crypto-friendly administration, that you have more voices in DC than you necessarily did before, or even new voices, or people who were just on the business side before who've now, I mean, the number of places that have hired policy people in the last 6 months is pretty amazing. So I think we are getting more active voices. In terms of navigating it for myself, look, I spent a long time as like a traditional lawyer, and so do have grounding in sort of the principles I learned then, just in terms of critical thinking. So I try to bring those whenever I'm dealing with something new or different. And as a crypto lawyer, it depends on if you're in-house or outside counsel and the way you think about putting forward your ideas and what you can do. So that's generally how I think about it. But on the mom and dad fighting, I like to sit back a little bit. I don't like to be in those fights.
We prefer when mom and dad don't fight, for sure.
It's crypto. Somebody is always fighting. Always.
Yeah, well, that's also true.
Paul Graywall said the other day, he said, we're a loud and cantankerous bunch. I thought that pretty much summed it up.
Yeah. That's for sure. I try not to be loud or cantankerous, but
I don't think I've ever seen you be loud or cantankerous, even at the DeFi roundtable. So you're good.
A little bit cantankerous. We had a little bit of a fight about whether Terra was DeFi or not, but I felt that for a long time. So I actually felt happy I got to say it out loud.
That's fair. Rebecca, in regards to the term decentralization, I think it's thrown around a lot in the industry, for better or for worse. How would you define it, and how do you think the government should think about it? I've also been told that Hester Peirce, the SEC commissioner, commended you for your definition of it. So if anyone has a good one, it's got to be you.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think of decentralization and DeFi slightly differently, but one, leading to the other. Decentralization, I think of as a philosophical concept more than anything else, right? That espouses taking control, authority, and power away from a centralizing entity or figure and dispersing it among people and entities geographically in all sorts of different ways. And if you look at the Bitcoin white paper, which I try to do at least once a year, that's really the foundational principle that crypto is built on, right? Just like removing a centralizing entity. For DeFi, I typically, and for a long time, have defined it as a blockchain-based software system that allows individuals to engage in economic transactions in a self-directed and self-hosted or self-custodial manner without the need for traditional intermediaries. But I think we're at the juncture where we should stop trying to define decentralization. Nobody agrees. We haven't for years. I don't think there's a good multi-factor test or even singular factor test. And when you think about what regulation really is and what it's based on activities, and we can identify what activities require regulation and what don't, and when people should need protection. We know that. That's what our financial services laws are for today, is to protect all of us, right? Because since none of us are financial institutions. So, if somebody's engaged in activities where your assets may be at risk and they have control over them, they probably require some guardrails around them. But otherwise, I don't know. I think DeFi may be outside of much of the regulatory perimeter as it exists today.
Yeah, I think that's other than that very elegant definition, we often find for an attorney, decentralization is my facts and circumstances, right? My protocol is the right definition. I'm curious, like, do you buy into maybe the counter argument that's being put forward by some on the Hill around sort of this absence of control, the kind of I know it when I see it? Is that something you think that we can get legislators behind, or where does that factor in, in how you see things progressing?
Yeah. So Mike Mosier and I co-authored a paper about 18 months ago where we came up with this sort of new-ish concept of independent control. It is derived from the 2019 guidance, where Mike was a primary author, from FinCEN, that defined total independent control as a time where there are likely maybe facts and circumstances where someone's a financial institution or a money transmitter. But our definition of control was about where there was a centralized or centralizing entity or person who had the independent and unilateral and immediate ability to affect third-party assets. I'm not sure you need a multi-factor test for that, honestly. And I'm not sure that necessarily makes you a financial institution either, but there is an academic paper that came out that preceded our paper called On DeFi and On-Chain CeFi. And they argued that when you have this on-chain CeFi, this centralized, they didn't define control in the same way, but sort of this centralizing actor, you need some form of regulation. Now, I don't think holding multi-sig keys means you need to be regulated as a financial institution, nor does our paper espouse that. But I think we have to think about new responsibilities for people who do have this type of control.
With all that in mind, how are you viewing the current market structure bill in the House right now, the Clarity Act? Is it something you're happy with? It could use some work. What are your thoughts on where we are at this moment?
Every piece of legislation could always use some work, right? And I think the thing that people lose sight of in dealing with crypto legislation is we have so much access now, but we also kind of did before in ways that was somewhat unprecedented. And so people are looking for something that's perfect. But if you look at something like Dodd-Frank, that is very far from perfect. The TradFi hates it, and it's still very hard to comply with today. So I do not think we should be aiming for perfect in legislation. I think this is one of the best drafts, if not the best draft of a market structure bill we've seen to date. I think it is incredibly complex, and a little bit is very crypto, tries to be all things to all people. I will say I don't know if I think we'll see it in this iteration get through the Senate. And I think the conflict of interest question may make it really hard to get out of the House. But I think that the people who've worked on it, both in industry and as far as staffers and people on the Hill, have put in so much time, so much effort, have worked with both the SEC and the CFTC, and have just been really thoughtful about it. So I certainly commend the effort. And yeah, I think if you put 6 crypto lawyers in a room, you'd have 20 different opinions about what should be changed in this bill. So yeah, maybe some tweaks here and there, but I'm excited to see where it goes, and super grateful that we even have a market structure bill, and that we're seeing Genius, go through vote today, probably. So, and this is what, 3 years after FTX collapsed, 2 years, something like that, where, I mean, I vividly remember flying to DC a week after FTX collapsed and being like, what is the future going to be here? And I didn't predict it would be this. So more than anything, I just am pretty grateful that we have these opportunities to put guardrails around the industry and move it forward in a way where, the cost of doing business is very different in the US now. It's not getting a subpoena. It's really figuring out how to make viable businesses, which I think is like a very privileged place to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting few weeks. I just want to touch on something that has come up in a couple of my conversations with industry players, and it's the notion of this mature blockchain test, which is sort of, I guess some would say, replacing maybe just another version of the Howey test, maybe a better version. What's your take on that? Do you think it's a better version? Is it unnecessary? Is it workable?
Yeah, I mean, I thought you were going to say that it's like the flip side of the decentralization test that we saw in the original draft of FIT, which is what I think it is. It is focused in many ways around the concept of control, but it's another multi-factor facts and circumstances test. I don't think it's meant to replace Howey, but I probably think we can do something a little more streamlined, is what I'd say.
It might have been the decentralization test they were referring to.
I mean, I think it's fair that somebody would say it's also the flip side of Howey, because it is sort of facts and circumstances based, and it does make it hard. I think having a multi-factor test may make it easier long-term for projects to, like, saying game it out is wrong, but to be able to make things work in their favor. And so I think having like a more streamlined control test may benefit everybody in the long run.
I don't know if you all have noticed this recently, but Avalanche has been on a roll. From FIFA launching their own Layer 1 on Avalanche, to VanEck unveiling the purpose-built fund to back ecosystem projects, the world is watching and building on Avalanche. Web3 gaming? Avalanche-based titles like MapleStory and Off the Grid have it covered. Finance? Avalanche has got that down pat too. Entertainment? Built for that as well. On top of that, starting in 2026, Sports Illustrated Stadium will be the first major sports venue to fully adopt blockchain ticketing powered by Avalanche. Backed by a strong network of builders and dedicated community, the momentum is accelerating on Avalanche for games, music, sports, finance, and more. Want to see how Avalanche is driving adoption? Go to avax.network and check it out.
Yeah, I want to ask a little bit about the process here. And so you mentioned kind of this like time machine. A lot of folks have referenced Dodd-Frank, in this process, who were practicing back then. We got this kind of ugly thing that nobody liked, and then it took, a few years to figure it out. And I think I've heard also that we get, maybe once a decade, the chance to really pass something like this.
Yeah.
But there was also a huge kind of having been in DC, through that FTX collapse and the environment you're talking about, some pretty depressing roundtables, back then in like 2023. You mentioned like the resurgence of the public policy in crypto person. And, we've talked a bit about the number of chefs in the kitchen on this legislation. Do you think, I guess, having been sort of with it the entire way, that it's a net benefit to have all these voices around the table? Does it make things more challenging? Like, obviously, everybody has slightly different objectives here. So what do you think it's been like in this like renewed sort of like too much winning environment for crypto in DC?
I don't know if I'm going to be sick of winning on the crypto side. So I don't know if there's too much winning because I have been here for many years and it's been lots of ups and downs and never a dull day. But I actually think it's beneficial to have a lot of different voices. You definitely have people coming from different places and in many ways, look, there are powerful players in DC in crypto that have been around for a long time, who really are behind Fairshake, which is, I think, a very important actor and has been obviously over, getting such a pro-crypto Congress in place. And so it is good to have these counterbalances and, different coalitions and alliances. I think beneficial back when we were dealing with like the DCCPA DCCPA 1 pre FTX collapse. It was a pretty small group. That was helpful in many ways because like on the DeFi side, there were 2 of us, maybe 3 of us, and we'd talk and like you could come to ground on it. But maybe we were missing things or not seeing things or whatever. Now you have so many DeFi voices, including players that, market makers who obviously think DeFi is really important, or exchanges who understand that they may end up being front ends in some ways to DeFi. And so you have a lot more protectors on interests than you necessarily did before. And I think the DeFi question around DCCPA is infamous. And so I'm happy to see more voices because you have people who come together, like that great coalition that came out, I think, last week about the new BRCA language that protects DeFi and takes, DeFi out of the money transmitter place. So, I don't think we would have seen that 3 years ago. And so I do think to the point, we're privileged and it's special that you can have this many people and this many cooks in the kitchen. And honestly, God bless Paul and Allison for taking so much feedback from so many different groups. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that. And I think you have to think like, wow, crypto is so the loud and cantankerousness actually benefits us because, X has become such a powerful place for ideas. And so it has pushed the legislative process forward in a way that I'm sure people never expected.
It really has. If you think about it, I think pro-crypto lawmakers spend more time on Twitter analyzing what the community has to say, maybe than other things that they should be doing. I think Twitter has become, or X, however you want to call it, has become a total powerhouse in the sort of democratization of this, new financial era. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, look, that goes to this crypto in America point and like the whole question around DeFi generally, which is you can see everything in our world is decentral. Everything is decentralizing, right? Like the sharing of ideas is very decentralized, and not just in crypto, like the sharing of ideas on X or, TikTok, or creators being able to make money without super extractive intermediaries, kind of hard, but like, Twitter and stuff, you can really create these businesses in ways that you couldn't before. I have kids and they certainly don't want to have intermediaries controlling everything. And so I do think DeFi and crypto in general is a push towards that. And that is uniquely American in many ways.
Bitcoin might sound complicated, but the Gemini credit card makes it simple. Use it like any credit card. Buy lunch, gas, or your weekly groceries, and you'll earn up to 4% back instantly in Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos straight to your account. No annual fee, and right now you can grab a $200 Bitcoin intro bonus. It's the easiest way to start building your Bitcoin stash. Go to gemini.com/CIA to learn more. Terms apply.
I want to ask briefly on that, the intermediation piece. It's one of those concepts that I think is really foreign to like a lawmaker or somebody is used to. Like one of the things that the law does is find a culpable party, right? It says, you step on my foot, you are responsible, and therefore you are punished. Dealing with all these different use cases, whether it's disintermediating a pool. So I liked in the DeFi roundtable, one of the really interesting quotes that came out of it was, is it peer-to-peer, peer-to-pool? That was like, I hadn't thought about it that way before. But, if we're talking about something like, real estate without a closing agent or like escrow without somebody holding those funds, you can automate it through a smart contract. There's a lot of cool tech solutions out there being built around that. Do you think we're going to get it's almost a self-driving car question, right? Like self-driving car, hits a tree or, God forbid, hits a person. Whose fault is that? Is it the developers? Is it the person that was sitting in the car? Is it the person who built the car? Do you think we're going to get legislators comfortable with that level of disintermediation, or is it just going to kind of slowly creep up on us and just be the standard at some point?
I do. So both, actually. I don't know if it's an either or. I do think the disintermediation is just already slowly creeping up on us in so many different ways. I think that, in Europe, lawmakers have been much more clear that they're uncomfortable with crypto because it disintermediates their power that comes through state-backed fiat currency. I don't think I have heard that from regulators directly in the EU. I have not heard it from anybody in the US, but I do think that's what makes people uncomfortable in the back of their minds about crypto, that it just takes the system and changes things dramatically. Although with, regulating stablecoins at this point, we're just regulating digital cash. And I do think we'll see stablecoins as cash, right? You see the announcements, Amazon's thinking about it, Walmart's thinking about it, PayPal, all of these. So I think, Meta, whomever, whatever you've seen announced, stablecoins are just going to be our new cash. So there will be a lot of regulation around that. But I think that the other thing is that the law already works for this, right? People would be like, saying to me 2 or 3 years ago, well, when there's a hack in DeFi, who are we going to hold responsible? I'm like, the hacker. Like there is tort law or criminal law, right? Like we've had wire fraud cases and other types of things. And so the law may need to evolve a little bit, but we already have laws in place that will make this all work and where we do know who the responsible party is. And I don't think, and I've been saying this for a long time, I do not think you should be importing responsible persons into DeFi, because then you're turning software developers into financial institutions. And I don't think any of us want that.
Rebecca, I want to circle back to the DeFi roundtable. You were a pivotal part of that event. Gerald and I actually did attend. whenever that was, a week ago, 2 weeks ago. But I wanted to get your take on something that I thought was really notable. And that was Chair Paul Atkins. He said that this is a quote, "The American values of economic liberty, private property rights, and innovation are in the DNA of DeFi." And I thought to myself, wow, that is such a huge departure from anything that Gary Gensler would say. So from where you sit, do you get the sense that the SEC is finally sort of getting this DeFi thing? I know I witnessed Hester. She was sitting in the front row, totally locked into everything that was going on in the conversation. I just think that is such a 180. Do you agree? Do you feel like they're really starting to listen at this point?
I mean, they just even repealed the exchange rule that was out there that would have really impacted DeFi and made like both validators and like DEXs into regulated exchanges. So I think they're almost going back to square one. And whereas Commissioner Peirce is really savvy on this, and I think I did one of her first conferences or first like firesides on DeFi. God, it was during COVID. So maybe, 5 years ago or something like that. She's come so far in understanding what it is. She has great staff around her who really understands what it is. But I think they're starting from first principles in understanding or trying to think about what DeFi is really about. So maybe a 180, but I don't think you even have to go that far to just say like they're in the mode that one would have hoped they would have been in from the beginning, which was where does our jurisdiction intersect? And that's how I think Commissioner Peirce really kicked off the roundtable in itself, just to say, like, does the SEC even have jurisdiction over this?
Right. I think something that I wonder a lot of times is when it comes to blockchain technology and decentralized finance and all these different, nooks and crannies, should it even be regulated at all? A part of me wants to think yes, because if you want to get quote unquote serious people into it, they need these frameworks and guidelines. But then another part of me thinks, it's technology and it should just exist, and the whole code is law argument can be presented as well. I'm curious what your take is on it. And, Gerald, lawyer as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what Gerald thinks too. DeFi has evolved so much from where we were back in 2019, 2020, when we were calling it like open finance. And I actually just saw somebody call it open finance again on crypto Twitter yesterday or something. And I was like, oh, wow, everything old is really new again. But I think that there are now businesses and intermediated like actors within DeFi who probably need to bear some responsibility for the types of actions they're taking. Should a fully autonomous protocol that has no administrative key be regulated? And should we be regulating the software developers and how they build it? No, definitely not. Like you should be able, crypto in America, you should be able to build and innovate just like you want to, and those kinds of things. If you're running a business around DeFi or making money from it in a particular way, you have to think about what you're doing, what kind of control or power you may have within the system, and what that really requires you to do. But I don't think we should be like straight up regulating software or software development in the US.
It's a really interesting issue. Generally, because you can separate out, okay, we do need to acknowledge that there are like different categories of assets that exist, right? And so we do need some kind of a test, like, the grove can become an orange, right? Or whatever, the orange can leave the farm, to just botch that analogy. But I think where I often hear kind of the biggest misunderstanding is from like the national security community. There's just like sort of blessing and curse of how transparent the blockchain is. Like the fact that you can tell that it's a bad actor that's interacting with your platform is in and of itself an advantage of the technology that you don't have when somebody is going to another country and, avoiding OFAC sanctions and dropping a sack of diamonds, on somebody's porch. So we have this sort of enormous amount of information and transparency of all these transactions. And so I think one of the things that we need to get a certain part of the community comfortable with is this is actually very pro national security, right? And you see people on both sides of this issue. I know, Senator Warner's office, who I won't out the friend who quoted this, but it was basically saying, he's Northern Virginia. I'm a constituent. He kind of represents the deep state. We forget how many of those cyber experts, live up there in Arlington. And so he always has concerns about Bank Secrecy Act and, some of these transactions. And there's a level of education where you have to say, like, look, you can have all this data. Like our good friend of the show, Ari Redboard, loves to say, like, just go find them on the ramps. Just go find where they ended up, right? And so I do think that's going to take a lot of familiarization and education with the community. Rebecca, I don't know what your conversations on the security side have been, but like that's always an interesting one to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were really fortunate we put out our paper in response to, post October 7th sort of craziness around, crypto, fueled all of Hamas and, some of those reports. And we were just seeing so many unreasonable proposals come out of the Hill. And Mike and I were like, well, we got to have somewhere where people can pivot. Crypto kept being like, no, not that, not that. And then, Deputy Secretary Adeyemo put out his proposal and came to the BA and said, you guys need to get your act together. So we actually were able to have a lot of really productive conversations at high levels, both on the Hill, within relevant agencies, at the NSA and the like, and then also with law enforcement, FBI, DOJ, things like that. I will say FBI and DOJ are super savvy on DeFi, and they've been working on these issues since we were calling it open finance. Like, I definitely represented a client back in 2019, 2020 who got a third-party subpoena. And we walked through like how Cloudflare works and all,
I've dealt with those.
all of
those
things.
are fun. Yeah.
But now they get it. They don't need that anymore. Like they know how to use block explorers like better than all of us. I think that there is a level of understanding that it may be good, but the other problem is it moves. So you could never intermediate somebody dropping cash somewhere, right? But it moves slowly. It's hard to amass. People have to like move it. Those things make it very hard. It's not that traceable. But the problem with crypto is it's traceable, but moves so fast. So one of the things we hear a lot in talking to law enforcement is like, we can trace it, but we still need to go to a judge or somebody where it takes a long time to go to an off-ramp or somewhere to order them to freeze it. And so we do need to make some laws or some changes to our laws that may allow for good faith freezing, both at the stablecoin level and maybe at the on and off-ramp level, because sometimes it's really hard to get court orders to stop it. So, there are positives and negatives to it. I do think that there's been a lot of great work done, including by our good friend Mike Mosier, with the national security experts all over DC. And then there's been great work done by the Security Alliance, or SEAL. They're all over DC too, even though you don't see them. So they're doing great work, organic work in the space, and then also in DC as well. So
I feel like crypto is taking over DC, Rebecca, or it's been there for a while.
I will say I was never a DC person like in my whole life. I wasn't that interested in politics or policy. My brother was very big into politics, lived in DC for a long time. So the only times I went to DC was like once to visit him and like once for Thanksgiving. And I don't even know if I went like growing up to see the things. And then the second I got, I went in-house maybe 5 years ago, I was in DC all the time because there were only a few of us, as I sort of alluded to earlier, who could talk about what the law is and like what the technology was. And so I've certainly been to DC more in the last 5 years than in my entire life before this. But now I like it. And I do think, I think it's a huge privilege to be able to participate in the process or in, with government in a way that you can in any other country. You cannot. And cryptos has had access to regulators in every country. Like I met regulators in Japan, in the EU, in Singapore, in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, and like the access is enormous, but we really have a privilege in the US to be able to participate in ways I just think people normally don't.
What about fair shake, Rebecca? I mean, I feel like it's on one hand, it's elected the most pro-crypto Congress in history, right? So that's been a good thing for getting legislation, getting friendlier regulators as well, although some might say that's President Trump. But a combination of the White House, Congress, and the regulators have sort of given us this new frontier for crypto. But with fair shake, there's also the argument, I guess, from the critics side or the skeptic side that, it's just crypto throwing a whole bunch of money around Washington, D.C. for influence. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, the Supreme Court opened it up with Citizens United. Like, everybody does it, whether you like it or not, or think it's unsavory or not. It is very much how politics works in this country. And, kudos to crypto for really getting it together. And I do think, being, I think, the third largest pack or something like that. I don't know what the number ended at and where we sit, but like, it is why we have so much access. And if this is what it took, we've all seen everything in crypto. This is the least crazy. This is one of the least crazy things that has happened, right? Like if you have to like do a whole long list, Fairshake being powerful and having a lot of money is not that crazy. Like plenty of other organizations do it. So I honestly support it since it's legal.
Right.
and it changes. It does change like access. But look, even before Fairshake was at, the place it is at today. And like, again, big kudos to Fairshake. We still had unprecedented access because you can have that in the United States in ways, as I said, that you just can't in other countries. And I think that's pretty unique.
Yeah, I'm curious about the other side of that, like sort of this grassroots effort as well, right? So, we've talked to folks from Coinbase. I'm the Virginia lead for Stand with Crypto. They throw out obviously some very big numbers, 52 million sort of crypto holders or crypto purchasers at some point. And you could actually go down in the election map, with general elections, presidential elections being so close and say, okay, well, there were, 7,000 members in this district and they lost by 4,000, that kind of thing. But one of the other things that I think became very clear in this last election cycle is that there may actually be a single issue pro-crypto voter, right? Like that may actually exist. There doesn't seem to be an anti-crypto voter. Like that doesn't really seem to be a thing. You can say there's people who don't like financial crime or there's people who don't like fraud or, that sort of thing, which makes sense. But do you see that changing? Like as we go into 2026, do you see the strategy? I know obviously I think Whip Emmer came on and called her she who shall not be named. But Senator Warren obviously has kind of dedicated a lot of her work to that strategy, and it doesn't seem to be that effective broader and more nationally. Like, do you think this is sort of it? Like, we're here to stay, or could crypto still become so politically unpopular that that's a different fight we fight? Like, how do you see that developing?
I don't think anyone will end up being a single issue anti-crypto voter, but it's so wrapped up in so many other anti-issues that, if you say like, oh, you're voting on X, Y, and Z, and sure, you hate crypto. So it may be part of a long laundry list. But I think I think there are definitely people, who may say that they're single issue crypto voters, but probably also wrapped up in a lot of other things like personal liberty or anti-surveillance or things like that. I will say that it seemed as if Senator Warren walked back some of her anti-crypto sentiment, maybe in January and February when she was talking a lot about bills, whether it be stablecoins or national security or things like that. Crypto is definitely here to stay. What I do think and worry about, and I thought we were going to go there when we were talking about the Clarity Act and Dodd-Frank, which is under both Clarity and Dodd-Frank. There's a ton of rulemaking by both the SEC and the CFTC. And first of all, that takes an extraordinary amount of time. It did for Dodd-Frank. And so you have like both a huge piece of legislation and then tons of very convoluted, difficult rules. But there is a lot that can go forward in rulemaking, including on highly technical issues under Clarity. I think the agencies don't love that and do worry that that can get rolled back as we've seen administrations flip-flop and new people come in to head up agencies. And so what I do hope is that we find ways to keep rulemaking narrow in Clarity, so that, like, I think we all just want peace. Like, we've all been used to this drama in crypto for so long. Like, I think all of us have cortisol levels that just like function at, like a different place. And we all know how to like handle stress better than most humans. So kudos to all of us. But I think people just mostly want to be running a business. And that's what most software and tech companies are. I think always at the frontier, you are going to have a fight and you're going to have skeptics. But I'm hopeful that, by the end of this administration, this is not a politicized issue. We have a full set of guardrails and we're all just like running businesses. And I was on a panel I don't know, maybe a few months ago, and they sort of said, like, what do you expect 2 years from now? And I was like, if we've all done our job right, you're never going to have another legal and regulatory panel. Like, all the lawyers will go back to being like back office people. Nobody will be loud and cantankerous. And we probably might be cantankerous, but nobody's going to be loud anymore. And we're all just going to be like doing the things you normally do at a software development company, which is like, protecting the interests. If you have alpha software, like, do you have to do a user agreement? You'll go back and forth with the business. How much friction is that causing? Whatever. But you won't be talking about like, what provision of this random bill do we care about, and how many times are you going to DC?
I'm going to be out of a job, Rebecca. Gosh.
You won't, because crypto in America is so many things, and like, we're not done building, and we're going to be building forever. And honestly, like, I know the we're still early thing is a meme, but like, we are today still early. Like, most major businesses have not adopted stablecoins yet. Like, stablecoins is going to be cash. Like, just like you go like this with your Apple Pay, like, you are going to do that with stablecoins. We're at the like tip of the iceberg on building. DeFi is 4% of not global GDP, crypto TVL. So like, we have a long way to go. You're not going to be out of a job for a long time.
I was mostly kidding.
I do remember you saying that, Rebecca, at the Yale blockchain conference. And I was like, that's so true. Because like, we always have general counsels on panels and the room is always packed. There's a purpose and there's a need. But hopefully over time, you guys can go back to doing what you got into this for.
Yeah, like, I don't know the Walmart GC. I don't know the Google GC. I can't name those people. And like, there's lots of cults of personality, sort of like Gerald was saying, around crypto lawyers. And that's going to hopefully fade when we get a lot of this dealt with.
For sure. You also mentioned the SEC, as we've talked about them a lot throughout this episode. And for those who don't know, Jito focuses on liquid staking through the Jito Sol token. And at the end of May, the SEC issued guidance on activities involving staking. For those who didn't read it, maybe didn't understand it, what does this mean? How did you interpret it? And why does it matter right now?
Sure. Great question. So, prior to the staking guidance, the SEC put out guidance on proof of work blockchain, so Bitcoin, and whether mining activities create securities transactions. And they said, no, it's just work. So no securities under the Howey test. So this proof of stake guidance was also along those lines to say that staking in certain forms, and I'll get to that in a second, don't create securities transactions. Like everything in crypto, we've made it very complicated because we use staking to refer to like 70 different types of things. But in this particular instance, the SEC took on native staking, so like direct staking on proof of stake blockchains, which means if you're a validator and you commit a certain amount of your assets to your validator, that's to sort of prove your alignment with the network and commit to network security. That does not create a securities transaction. They also talked about sort of like this idea of third-party staking. So blockchain network like Solana is something called delegated proof of stake. So you have both people who are directly staking as validators and then third parties like any of us who could commit our SOL and delegate it to another validator to improve their stake weight, which means they get to sort of like move up in the queue and have special other privileges. So that also is not a securities transaction. And then they also took on staking as a service. So there are people who will run validators and take on people's commits of certain types of assets. And they said that staking as a service is also not a securities transaction, including with like real pretty big variations on judgment with respect to like staking rewards and certain types of operational things. And they said that is not going to create securities transactions either. The real takeaway, though, from the proof of work and proof of stake blockchains as they work together is that the SEC is committed to keeping the network layer neutral, or credibly neutral, as we all really want it to be. That's very important because if you think about the way our internet works today, right, like HTTP, SMTP, all the network infrastructure is neutral. It's not regulated as a financial institution or even as a, certain type of telecommunications protocol or things like that. And so we really want to make sure that the network layer of all blockchains remains credibly neutral.
Yeah, Rebecca, I want to put you on the spot a little bit as a lawyer and make you get technical there, because say is a proof of stake layer one, right? And Solana has its model, Say kind of has its model. I think focusing on high transactions, low fees, and then obviously finality and security. You get into all these other sort of technical issues, and for a while there, it feels like we were just seeing another L1 launch another thing that was like a slight variation on this other thing. And you just mentioned sort of traditional network infrastructure, for the internet. Like there are obviously, platforms like Linux where it's open source and it's got its sort of users. There's Mosaic browser and Firefox, and then these kind of giant market participants that sort of set the standard. In the case of Apple, courts may argue that that's like not the best thing to have. But do you think that we're going to get to a point, like a lot of people like to speculate on, how many L1s do we actually need to like run crypto? Do you think we've already got sort of the building blocks out there and we're just going to be fine tuning sort of a protocol that's already existing? Or is there like something new that we're just not getting, that like solves the trilemma, or what do you think about that?
I think we probably have all the tools we need to solve whatever we need on the layer one scaling side of things. Look, just like people like to use different browsers, you may want to end up using different types of networks for different things. So I'm going to be politic and not take sides or create a mom and dad thing, but I do think that there may be better models than others out there, and I'm not sure we need like continuous little tweaking for all of this. I think everybody should be really focused on scaling and what your North Star is and what you're actually trying to attract. Because if you're trying to attract a decentralized NASDAQ, you need to build your blockchain to do one thing or, a very specific set of things. And if you're looking to attract a bunch of creator platforms, you may not need that. Although, X moves really fast. And if you want to do decentralized X or decentralized Twitter, like you may need something that moves at the same frequency as your decentralized NASDAQ. So I think we have the building blocks. I think we may need to work on some cross-chain abilities. I think there's a lot to build there. And people should just be really focused on continuing to scale their current existing networks. But, VCs are out there and they're still going to want to fund L1. So I'm sure I'm wrong on what's going to happen.
Prediction time. Rebecca, when do we get guidance from the SEC on liquid staking?
Honestly, I may be wrong on this. I think in the next few weeks, we will. Yeah. I don't have any specialized knowledge, but at a particular point in time, there was indications. Well, first of all, the footnote in the staking guidance says, look, this is just on this very narrow part of staking. We didn't take on liquid staking or restaking, but I know they've been thinking about it and soliciting a lot of industry input on it. So, and there is a huge appetite for guidance. So I'd say probably in the next few weeks.
They've been working a lot. Think about it. The last 4 years, nothing was done. And how much guidance has come out of the SEC in the last 5 or 6 months?
Done.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Things were done, just not in a good way. I mean, the amount of guidance that they put out and the amount of productive work they've done in the first, it's June 17th, so 5 months of the year is unprecedented in government, I think. Unprecedented.
So do you think now with Brian Quinten's hopefully making his way finally into that chair, is it the CFTC's turn or where do you think we go on that side of things?
Brian has a lot of work to do on the derivative side. There's just a lot that's been out there that has never sort of come to pass in the last administration, including these questions on perps. But like what I was going to say is no matter what Brian does, I feel like crypto's going to be like, oh, but us too. So like, even if there's work, somebody said this to me that, the CFTC has been soliciting feedback on perpetuals and the only people who've put in responses are crypto people.
I saw that.
So, yeah, I think that whatever Brian does, crypto will raise its hand and be like, don't forget about us. So, yes, whatever his focus may be, there will be a crypto element to it, too.
Yeah. I was there at his hearing and the amount of questions, it's funny, for a Senate that really wants to focus on, or at least a Senate Agriculture Committee that thinks it should focus more on, what the CFTC is actually for, right? For the agriculture side of things, for futures, for farmers. There was a lot of questions about crypto. Like probably 3/4 of the questions were about digital assets.
Yeah.
Really
Should we talk about the fact that
strong.
Genius passed while we were on this podcast?
Did it? Yes, we have to.
Pass.
Gotta break it. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's great.
68-30 was the final vote tally. So
Nice.
There we go. Now
So-
you know when we
US
recorded
Senator
this.
Hagerty.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do we do? USD A to Z? Is that the next? I think I saw JPM. Is it JPMD? They rugged us on that one. That's more boring than I thought it might be. But what do you think about? I guess just going back to stablecoins, we have a lot of conversations on one, like the movement of money, right? So I think we're all totally aligned here that stablecoins are going to sort of dominate, but also maybe at the expense of commercial deposits. And then that brings like yields into question. Just the arguments out there, right? Like how do you see this sort of impacting the TradFi system and like where we go from here just on those types of products?
Yeah, I mean, I literally had a conversation about this with somebody this morning. Stablecoins and tokenized deposits are totally different things. And maybe you just mean commercial deposits are actually going to be impacted because you're going to have, and I've heard this argument too, where you're going to have less cash in banks to be able to be, loaned out and things like that. So it's going to change our economy. I don't think it's going to grow that fast. But like stablecoins and tokenized deposits are totally different. They're going to function totally differently. Banks are going to treat them totally differently. I would say 5 years ago, banks didn't understand the distinction, but now they do. And so, you should think of tokenized deposits almost as wholesale stablecoins where you do bank-to-bank transfers or central bank to central bank transfers. We're never going to see actual wholesale stablecoins. France has been trying to get that off the ground for years and nobody will do it. So I certainly don't think US is going to do it. But I think we're going to be able to see both. I actually think tokenized deposits is going to be really cool, but the banks have just not operationalized that yet. And I don't think the Fed is ready for that. I think we got to do baby steps. So I think stables is going to be cash. Just now the government gets a chance to regulate cash, which they would have done if they thought about it way back in the day in a different way.
Yeah, I still like the comparison. I think it was Tim Scott brought it up in that markup back in March. It said stablecoins are just traveler's checks on the blockchain. And everybody I've told that analogy to, they're like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah. I feel like traveler's checks are like a hybrid between stablecoins and tokenized deposits, actually, but on blockchain. Not to
No.
disparage
Elaborate.
Senator Scott. I really think everyone should start thinking of stablecoins as cash. How much cash do you ever carry around? Like almost never.
Never.
Yeah. What do you think? So just going the commodities discussion versus an actual currency, the fact that a lot of these are going to look a lot more like money market funds on the back end, to be honest, right? Like, or at least T-bill backed, depending on the asset mix and under Genius, with the proof of reserves, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's obviously good for America to have more purchasers of T-bills. Like that's obvious, especially if we can sort of decentralize some of the liquidation risk across all these platforms.
Yeah.
But there do seem to be some like derivative-like elements in a lot of these stables out there that maybe won't fit under Genius. And so I'm thinking of like something like Tether, or like you see maybe something that's more, a gold-backed USD or something like that. Do you think this is all going to kind of fit, or do we still have to figure out who gets to regulate those? Because in the US, people also love to tell us how many regulators we have to report to, right? Like how cross-regulated we are. So does Genius solve this for now, or are we going to have a lot more conversations depending on
No, I think
the mix here?
I think Genius is pretty narrow. So, and to the point we talked about earlier, crypto is not going to stop coming up with all sorts of new types of things. Like even, traditional financial institutions will be kind of degen in terms of what they're putting together. So I think we have a whole host of new types of financial instruments that are going to come on chain, and that we'll have to figure out how to regulate around them, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Rebecca, I think we've covered a lot of ground here, and we could talk to you for hours probably, and a lot of us have outside of this podcast. So thank you for taking the time. But the last question we always like to ask people is, what else are you watching in DC that you think people should pay attention to, aside from what we've discussed?
it's going to take a little while, but there are a lot of people thinking about a special path forward for DeFi derivatives and trying to be really creative about that. So I think we're going to see a lot of cool proposals coming through when Brian takes the helm at the CFTC, because there's so much appetite for DeFi derivatives and perps and all of that stuff. And so thinking about how to bring that into the US is top of mind for a lot of projects and a lot of players in DC. So it's my alpha.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of room for opportunity. I'm excited for it. And thank you again for coming on. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you so much.